Hello, welcome back to The Independent Pianist. I'm your host, Cole Anderson, as usual. My apologies for missing my upload last week. I was in the middle of a move, actually, so I'm finally in a kind of a more permanent home, and I'm in more of a position to get back to recording things as well. I've had a little bit of a difficult, just very busy period where I wasn't really able to record very many new pieces. But actually in the past few days, I've been able to work on some new things and record some new things. So I'm going to be doing more of that again. And so today we're continuing with the whole trend of doing the Busoni transcriptions of Bach chorale preludes. Busoni, of course, was absolutely marvelous Italian composer, pianist from the late 19th to early 20th centuries. I believe he died in 1925. And Busoni was an incredibly influential figure on many pianists of the 20th century. All the great young pianists who were around at that time, Horowitz, Rubinstein, Arau, all these people mentioned Busoni and talked about how influential his daring playing was. Busoni was a man with a enormous intellectual grasp of music and art and literature and everything else, a really tireless composer, arranger, and pedagogue. So his arrangements of these organ works for piano solo should be seen kind of in the light of pedagogical works. And he demonstrates not only how to realize an organ work for the piano solo, but also ways that you could elaborate another composer's work, ways that you could vary the original in an effective manner. And that's what he does here as well. So this particular chorale prelude is one of the simplest that Bach ever wrote, but also extremely moving. It's in a pretty straightforward three-part texture. The organist's feet would be playing the bass line. The left hand is playing a continual series of 16th notes, and the right hand plays the slightly embellished tune of the hymn. And one very interesting thing about this particular chorale prelude, which is different than many of Bach's others, is that he begins with a fairly elaborate ornamentation on the original hymn tune. But this is only the case for the first couple of phrases of the hymn. For the entire ending part of the chorale prelude, Bach reverts to the bare notes of the original hymn, which is quite a striking decision on his part. So it would be perfectly natural, actually, to assume that Bach may have intended for the organist to continue to embellish the later phrases in the same manner as the opening phrases. So you could perhaps come up with something kind of like this for the later phrases. Obviously, for the pianist, if you wanted to actually incorporate something like this into the Busoni transcription, it would require a little bit of adaptation on your part, but it would certainly be possible. I've never actually heard anyone continue to embellish this in this manner, and it's actually not hard to understand why. Even if the idea occurs to you, you might find that you actually prefer the more bare original. I know that I do, actually. I find the simplicity of the final measures of this piece to be very moving and powerful. And Busoni actually makes something out of this himself. There is the idea that when something repeats, you can embellish it, you can add more to it, but there's also the reverse possibility. When you have music which repeats, you can also remove complications from the music. And Busoni does both things in this arrangement. So when there are repetitions, for example, the first phrase is heard twice, in Busoni's version, he thickens the bass sonorities here. So instead of just bare octaves like in the first phrase, doubles notes within the octaves in the left hand so that you get richer, fuller harmonies and chords like this. There's also one or two places where Bach has actually written a trill and Busoni actually omits it for some reason. I'm not exactly sure why. So I actually added one of those back in. So besides this, though, Busoni's transcription is very faithful to the original chorale prelude. The only place where he takes something of a liberty is in the final phrase of the hymn. In Bach's original, the final phrase is heard once, and the 16th note motion continues to the last chord. Busoni does something a little different. He repeats the final phrase, but an octave lower. He also makes this wonderful notation in Italian. He says, più oscuro ma sempre cantando. So more obscure, but still singing. And it's remarkably moving, actually. Just this simple alteration, just transposing the melody down an octave, just gives it some kind of very indefinable, wonderful quality. For the last three notes of the hymn tune, Busoni has a brilliant idea. He removes the 16th note tracery and ends with three kind of muffled, intense chords. It's a very simple idea, but so powerful in execution. So there you have it. This is a wonderful transcription, one of the greatest that I know of, like many of these chorale preludes. And also it's a wonderful piece for intermediate pianists out there who are looking for something a little bit challenging, but not impossible. It is quite tricky to get the balance right between the 16th notes and the melody. That requires a good deal of control. And of course, you have to figure out your fingering well so that you can transfer the 16th notes from hand to hand. But it's by no means impossible, and it's so beautiful and so effective. It certainly gets me every time that I hear it. Stay tuned for the complete performance coming up in just a moment. And stay tuned next week. I'm going to be back with some more music. I promise. I'm getting back into my weekly routine now. Until next time, this is Cole Anderson signing off. Take care and keep practicing.